What if everything you thought you knew about ancient history was missing some of its most astonishing chapters? Picture a civilization so advanced, so influential, that its secrets were deliberately buried not by time, but by the very empires that came after it. This is the story of ancient Persia, a kingdom of unmatched grandeur where rulers built paradise gardens, engineers created the first refrigerators, and diplomats forged treaties so fair they're still studied today. Yet somehow, so much of Persia's brilliance has faded into the shadows of history until now. For centuries, the whispers of Persia's lost wonders have tantalized historians. Hidden texts, forgotten inventions, and political strategies so cunning they reshaped the ancient world. But here's the truth: Persia wasn't just another empire. It was a powerhouse of innovation, a melting pot of cultures, and a master of secrets so profound they could rewrite our understanding of the past. Imagine a place where fire temples held cosmic wisdom, where women wielded power centuries ahead of their time, and where a single underground network could cool entire palaces in the scorching desert heat. These aren't myths, they're real, and they've been waiting for their moment to resurface. Today, we're pulling back the veil on 30 of Persia's most guarded secrets, revelations that will shatter your assumptions and leave you seeing history in a whole new light. From the astonishing engineering feats that defied the elements to the untold stories of queens who outsmarted their rivals, this journey isn't just about rediscovering the past. It's about uncovering the hidden threads that connect Persia's genius to our modern world. So if you've ever wondered how a single empire could inspire everything from democracy to desert, or why its legacy was nearly erased, stay with us. Because what you're about to learn isn't just history, it's a revelation. The first secret begins with a mystery carved into stone: the lost language of the Achaemenid Empire. For centuries, the intricate wedge-shaped symbols etched into cliffs and tablets across Persia were nothing more than indecipherable marks, but hidden within them lay the bureaucratic brilliance of one of history's most sophisticated empires. Old Persian cuneiform wasn't just a writing system, it was the backbone of an administration that governed millions, from the banks of the Nile to the foothills of the Himalayas. And the key to cracking this ancient code, a towering cliff face in western Iran known as the HISTOR inscription. Picture this: a sheer rock face 300 feet high, covered in elaborate carvings and 3 different scripts: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. This wasn't just royal propaganda, it was a linguistic Rosetta Stone commissioned by King Darius the Great to proclaim his victories. But for modern scholars, it became something far more precious: a cheat sheet. By comparing the known Babylonian text with the unknown Old Persian, linguists like Henry Rawlinson painstakingly pieced together the alphabet, symbol by symbol. A breakthrough didn't just reveal the words of long-dead kings. It exposed the meticulous record-keeping of an empire that documented everything from tax rolls to grain shipments with near-modern precision. What's truly astonishing isn't just that they wrote it all down, but how they did it. The Achaemenids didn't just use cuneiform, they streamlined it. While their Babylonian neighbors needed 600 symbols to write, Persian scribes whittled it down to just 36, creating what might be history's first efficient administrative shorthand. This wasn't just writing, it was a revolution in communication, allowing decrees to speed across an empire that spanned 3 continents. And here's the twist: when Alexander the Great burned Persepolis, he wasn't just destroying a palace. He was nearly erasing the written memory of a civilization whose paperwork was as vital as its palaces, yet the stones refused to stay silent. Today, every translated tablet reveals another layer of Persia's hidden genius: tax codes that protected the poor, infrastructure projects logged like modern blueprints, even diplomatic letters showing how they managed an empire of 100 cultures without brute force. The real secret: their language wasn't just a tool, it was the invisible glue holding together history's first multicultural superpower. and without those stubborn scholars scaling cliffs to copy inscriptions letter by letter, we might never have known. Beneath the sun-baked earth of modern-day Iran lies a labyrinth so vast, so precisely engineered. It rivals the mysteries of ancient Egypt, yet few have ever heard its story. The underground city of Kish isn't just a network of tunnels. It's a 2,500-year-old masterpiece of Persian ingenuity, carved by hand into solid rock, stretching over 4 square miles beneath the island of Kish in the Persian Gulf. Step into its shadowy corridors and you'll find ventilation shafts angled to perfection, staircases spiraling deep into the earth, and chambers designed with mathematical precision, all hidden just 40 feet below the surface. But here's the puzzle. Why would an empire known for its soaring palaces and lush gardens bury a city in the dark? Theories abound. Some say it was a refuge, a secret sanctuary where Persian nobles could vanish during invasions, complete with stables for horses and hidden wells for water. Others argue it was a commercial hub, a covert trade network where goods moved unseen, protected from the scorching heat and bandits above ground. But the most tantalizing clue lies in the architecture itself. The corridors aren't just passages, they're designed to create natural airflow, with vents funneling desert breezes downward to maintain a constant, cool temperature year-round. Sound familiar? It's the same principle modern engineers use for energy-efficient buildings today. Then there's the chilling possibility that Kish was more than just practical. Ancient texts whisper of Persian, eremitic traditions, monastic orders that sought wisdom in isolation. Could these tunnels have been a spiritual retreat, a place where Zoroastrian scholars studied the cosmos far from the distractions of the surface world? One chamber, perfectly circular with star-like carvings on its ceiling, fuels this theory. It mirrors the design of Persian observatories where astronomers tracked celestial movements centuries before telescopes existed. What's undeniable is the sheer audacity of its construction. Without metal tools or modern machinery, workers chiseled through limestone using nothing but bronze picks and patience. The walls still bear the marks of their labor, each groove a testament to the empire's mastery of geometry and physics. And unlike the chaotic catacombs of Rome or the cramped tunnels of Cappadocia, Kish's layout reveals something extraordinary, a grid system. Straight avenues intersect at perfect right angles, proving this wasn't haphazard digging. It was urban planning at its most visionary. Yet the greatest secret of Kish might be the one we haven't uncovered. Less than 10% of the city has been explored. Infrared scans suggest vast, uncharted chambers, some large enough to hold entire villages. Could one of them still hide the treasures or scrolls of a forgotten Persian elite? For now, the tunnels keep their silence. But each new excavation brings us closer to answering the haunting question. If this is what Persia built in secret, what else did they leave buried in history's shadows? The legend of the Persian Immortals has echoed through history like the march of their own bronze-shod boots, an elite force of exactly 10,000 soldiers, never diminishing, never faltering, their ranks eternally replenished like some unstoppable tide of warriors. Ancient Greek historians painted them as near-mythical figures, an army that never aged, never died. But here's the truth hidden beneath the bronze and bravado. The Immortals weren't supernatural. They were something far more fascinating, a masterpiece of propaganda and psychological warfare. Take a closer look at their gear. Unlike the patchwork armor of most ancient armies, these soldiers moved in unison, clad in scaled bronze cuirasses that shimmered like serpent skin, their shields woven from wicker and leather, light enough for rapid movement, yet tough enough to deflect arrows. Their heads were crowned with elaborately wound cloth tiaras, a deceptive touch of elegance masking the practicality of padded protection, but the real genius lay in their uniformity. Every soldier looked identical, armed with short spears, iron-tipped arrows, and a signature dagger at the hip. When one fell, another would step forward, indistinguishable from his predecessor. To an enemy watching from a distance, it truly seemed as though no warrior ever fell. Their training was just as calculated. These weren't just conscripts dragged from the fields, they were career soldiers drilled relentlessly in formations that could pivot from a defensive square to a crushing wedge in moments. Persian records describe exercises mimicking the chaos of battle, formations breaking and reforming in total synchronization, a lethal dance rehearsed until it was second nature. And then there were the logistics. Behind every marching column trailed a caravan of covered wagons carrying not just supplies but fresh reinforcements. A wounded or fallen immortal would be replaced before his absence could be noticed, the illusion of invincibility meticulously maintained, but the most startling revelation. The immortals weren't even Persia's most lethal fighters. That honor went to the shock troops, the Sparabara, with their towering shields, or the horse archers who could loose arrows at full gallop. The immortals' true power wasn't in their swords, it was in the stories told about them. Greek chroniclers, witnessing this endless sea of identical warriors, spun tales of an undying legion, a myth the Persians were all too happy to encourage. Imagine the dread of facing an army that seemed to regenerate before your eyes, a force where every casualty was instantly erased. That was the real weapon, not steel, but sheer, paralyzing terror. So why does this matter today? Because the immortals reveal a truth about power that transcends millennia. Perception can be sharper than any blade. Persia didn't just conquer with force, it conquered the imagination. And in that, they were truly immortal. In the gilded halls of Persia's royal palaces, where feasts could stretch for days and golden goblets never emptied, one drink held a darker purpose than celebration. Persian kings lived by an unspoken rule: trust no one, especially not the wine. What appears at first glance as mere royal indulgence was actually a survival tactic, a deadly game where every sip could be the last. The ritual of the royal wine taster wasn't about refinement. It was a calculated defense against betrayal, a tradition steeped in equal parts elegance and terror. Picture the scene: a banquet hall lit by flickering torchlight, nobles laughing as musicians play. The king raises his cup, but before it touches his lips, a servant steps forward. This isn't just any servant, it's the Shahesham, the royal taster, whose job was to drink from every vessel meant for the king. If the wine was poisoned, the Shahesham would collapse in agony, a human alarm bell. But here's the twist: these tasters weren't disposable peasants. They were often high-ranking officials, sometimes even relatives, chosen because their deaths would provoke outrage. Poisoning the king's wine now meant igniting a political firestorm, a deterrent as much as a detection system. The paranoia ran deeper than just random checks. Persian rulers employed an entire network of tasters, each with specialized roles. Some tested only for arsenic, others for hemlock or aconite poisons favored by assassins. Records from Susa describe a master of the cup, a role combining sommelier and security chief, who catalogued every vineyard, every batch, and every server who handled the royal supply. And if a taster showed signs of illness, the punishment was brutal. Suspects, often rival nobles or disgruntled generals, faced execution by their own method, forced to drink from the same poisoned vintage they'd prepared for the king. Yet the most fascinating detail isn't the cruelty, it's the psychology. This wasn't just about survival, it was theater. By making the wine ritual so public, kings sent a clear message. Every gesture of loyalty would be scrutinized, every betrayal met with theatrical vengeance. Even Alexander the Great adopted the practice after conquering Persia, realizing its power to unsettle would-be assassins. But perhaps the ultimate irony lies in the legacy. Modern sommeliers, with their swirling and sniffing, unknowingly echo an ancient tradition born not from sophistication, but from fear. The next time you see someone taste wine before serving it, remember, you're witnessing a 3,000-year-old act of distrust perfected by kings who ruled with one eye on their throne and the other on their cup. And if you think this paranoia faded with time, consider this: the very word toast, as in raising a glass, may trace back to Persian courts, where a literal piece of spiced bread was dropped into wine to neutralize toxins. Every clink of a glass today carries the ghost of an empire that knew all too well: power tastes sweet, but it's never drunk without caution. High on the windswept plains of ancient Persia, flames danced in temples where no shadow could touch them, eternal fires said to have burned without interruption for 1,000 years. These weren't ordinary hearths, they were the sacred Achaemenids, the fire temples of Zoroastrianism, where the elements themselves were worshipped as divine messengers. But behind their shimmering heat lay a secret far more profound than ritual. These flames were the beating heart of a spiritual revolution that reshaped the ancient world. At first glance, the temples seemed simple domed chambers housing a single flame atop a stepped altar. Yet every detail held meaning. The fire was never allowed to die, tended by white-robed priests who fed it only with sandalwood and myrrh, their breath masked to avoid contaminating its purity. Surrounding it, 4 concentric circles symbolized the layers of creation: earth, water, air, and finally, the fire itself, representing the divine light of Ahura Mazda. But here's what most histories miss: these temples weren't just places of worship. They were ancient power grids. Archaeologists studying the ruins of Adur-Gushnasp, the greatest of the fire temples, uncovered something startling beneath its altars: a network of copper pipes and ventilation shafts designed to create a self-sustaining airflow. The flames didn't just burn, they were engineered to rise with supernatural consistency, fed by subterranean channels that funneled oxygen like a bellows. This wasn't mysticism, it was physics perfected centuries before the scientific revolution. And the fire's endurance wasn't magic, it was logistics. Teams of priests rotated in shifts, maintaining a relay that spanned generations, their lives dedicated to ensuring not a single moment of darkness. The symbolism ran deeper still. In Zoroastrian belief, fire wasn't merely an element, it was a living bridge between heaven and earth. When Persian kings embarked on conquests, they carried embers from these temples in bronze vessels, planting new flames in conquered lands as both spiritual anchors and political statements. A fire temple rising in Babylon or Egypt wasn't just a shrine, it was a declaration that Persian light had arrived. Yet the most revolutionary idea lay in the flame's egalitarian nature. Unlike the exclusive inner sanctums of Egyptian or Greek temples, Zoroastrian fire altars were often placed in open courtyards, visible to all nobles, merchants, even foreign visitors. The message, divine light, belonged to everyone. This radical inclusivity unsettled neighboring empires where gods were hoarded by priestly elites. Little wonder then that when Alexander's armies stormed Persepolis, they targeted the fire temples first, believing extinguishing the flames would break Persia's soul. But fire has a way of surviving even the darkest nights. Today, in remote villages of Iran and India, descendants of Zoroastrian priests still tend sacred flames, some claiming direct lineage to embers that have burned since Cyrus the Great walked the earth. The temples may have crumbled, but their legacy flickers on, hidden in plain sight. Ever light a candle for comfort, that instinct to seek hope in flame may be Persia's most enduring gift to the world. Buried beneath the ruins of ancient Babylon for over 2,000 years, a humble clay cylinder no larger than a loaf of bread held a message that would shock the modern world. The Cyrus Cylinder, etched in Akkadian cuneiform in the year 539 B.C., doesn't just record the conquest of Babylon by Persia's King Cyrus the Great. It unveils a philosophy so radical for its time, it's been called history's first declaration of human rights. But here's what makes it extraordinary. This wasn't propaganda carved in stone for gods to see. It was a public decree meant to be read aloud in the streets, promising freedom to the conquered. At first glance, the text follows the usual script of ancient victory monuments praising the king, condemning the previous ruler. Then comes the curveball. Cyrus doesn't boast of slaughter or enslavement. Instead, he announces the liberation of all captive peoples, the restoration of looted temples, and the right of displaced populations to return home. One line in particular still echoes today: "I gathered all their inhabitants and restored to them their dwellings." This wasn't empty rhetoric. Historical records confirm Cyrus freed over 40,000 Jews from Babylonian captivity, funding their return to Jerusalem and even subsidizing the rebuilding of their temple. For context, this happened while most empires were still crucifying dissenters and erasing entire cultures. The cylinder's rediscovery in 1879 by British archaeologists should have rewritten history books overnight. Yet for decades it sat in the British Museum's storage, dismissed as just another royal inscription. Then came the bombshell. Scholars realized the decree matched word for word with accounts in the Hebrew Bible and Babylonian chronicles. Suddenly, a long-dismissed legend about a tolerant Persian king had physical proof. But the real surprise: modern imaging techniques revealed the cylinder wasn't unique. Dozens of broken fragments found near Baghdad show identical texts, proof that Cyrus mass-produced these decrees like ancient press releases, scattering them across his empire. What's often overlooked is the cunning politics behind this generosity. Cyrus wasn't just being noble, he was playing the long game. By positioning himself as a liberator rather than a conqueror, he turned potential rebellions into loyal provinces. Tax revenues flowed more smoothly from contented subjects than oppressed ones. Temples he restored became hubs for regional administration. Even his famous right to return had a strategic edge. Displaced groups sent home became cultural bridges, easing Persian control. Yet the outcome was undeniable. For the first time in recorded history, an empire thrived not by crushing diversity, but by embracing it. The cylinder's afterlife is just as fascinating. During Iran's 1971 celebrations of 2,500 years of monarchy, the Shah called it the world's first charter of human rights, a controversial claim that sparked debates among historians. Was this ancient text truly a human rights document or a political tool rebranded for modern agendas? The truth lies somewhere in between. While Cyrus didn't use our modern language of equality, the cylinder planted a revolutionary idea that a ruler's legitimacy could come from protecting the weak, not just dominating them. Today, a replica of the cylinder sits in the United Nations headquarters, enshrined as an early symbol of multicultural coexistence. But perhaps its greatest legacy is the questions it forces us to ask. How many other ancient breakthroughs have we mislabeled as myths? And if a 6th century B.C. king could envision an empire built on tolerance, why does it still feel like such a radical idea 26 centuries later? The answer might lie not in the cylinder's baked clay, but in the fires it continues to kindle, in historians' debates, in human rights discussions, and in the quiet hope that the past might still have something to teach the present. Beneath the sun-scorched deserts of ancient Persia, a hidden network of tunnels snaked through the earth like veins carrying lifeblood to a parched civilization. These were the Qanat's gravity-fed aqueducts that turned barren lands into blooming oases, a feat of engineering so brilliant it outlasted empires. While Rome built towering aqueducts as monuments to its power, Persia's genius flowed quietly underground where evaporation couldn't steal a single precious drop. The system was deceptively simple in concept, yet masterful in execution. Workers dug vertical shafts at intervals, sometimes plunging hundreds of feet deep, then connected them with a gently sloping tunnel that guided water from mountain aquifers to arid valleys below. The precision was staggering. A slope too steep would erode the tunnel, too shallow, and the flow would stagnate. Persian engineers calculated gradients down to the fraction of a degree using nothing but knotted ropes and weighted plumb tools that wouldn't look out of place in a modern surveyor's kit. But the real marvel wasn't just the digging, it was the maintenance. Each Qanat was a living system, tended by generations of muqannis, tunnel experts who passed down secrets like human gyroscopes. They'd lower themselves into the shafts on woven ropes, feeling for airflow changes that signaled collapses or listening for the hollow echoes of hidden leaks. Some tunnels stretched over 30 miles, requiring teams to coordinate repairs like underground firefighters, often working in complete darkness with only the sound of dripping water to guide them. The impact was transformative. Cities like Yazd, sitting in the heart of Iran's central desert, flourished where no civilization should have survived. Qanats fed not just drinking wells but sprawling orchards and wind-catcher cooling systems. They enabled public baths, ceramic workshops, even ice production in the dead of summer. Persians would channel winter water into shaded underground chambers where it froze into blocks stored year-round. Modern hydrologists still study Qanats with awe. Their gravity-powered design wastes zero energy, their underground path prevents contamination, and they recharge aquifers instead of depleting them, principles now championed as sustainable water management. From the Fagara systems of North Africa to the Kores of Western China, the Qanats' legacy flows on. Even Los Angeles borrowed the concept for its stormwater infiltration galleries. Perhaps the greatest testament to their brilliance, of the over 30,000 Qanats built in ancient Persia, nearly 12,000 still function today, some after 3,000 years of continuous use. While modern dams silt up and pipelines rust, these silent tunnels keep delivering life to the desert, proof that the best solutions aren't always the ones that shout the loudest, but the ones that endure. One of history's most chilling vanishings begins with an army so vast, its footsteps should have echoed through the ages, yet not a single shield or sandal was ever found. In 525 B.C., King Cambyses II of Persia dispatched 50,000 soldiers into the Sahara's western desert, a force large enough to conquer nations. Their mission, to crush the oracle of Ammon at Siwa Oasis, whose priests had dared defy Persia's might. But somewhere in the dunes between Luxor and Siwa, the entire army evaporated like mirage water. Ancient historians called it divine punishment. Modern archaeologists call it an enigma that defies logic. The first clue lies in the accounts of Herodotus, who wrote that after weeks of marching, a monstrous sandstorm roared down upon the troops, burying them alive in a sea of swirling dust. Skeptics dismissed this as myth until satellite imagery revealed the very route Cambyses' army would have taken cuts through the Great Sand Sea, a region where dunes can reach 600 feet tall and winds scream at hurricane force. In 2008, geologists studying the area uncovered something eerie: sudden, massive deposits of sand consistent with ancient megastorms, layered like geological tombstones over entire landscapes. Could 50,000 men truly disappear this way? The Sahara holds darker possibilities. Archaeologists searching for traces of the lost army have proposed a grimmer scenario: rebellion. Persian military records from the period hint at unrest among Egyptian conscripts forced to march under Cambyses' banner. A recently deciphered tablet from Memphis describes the muttering of the sands, a cryptic phrase some scholars now interpret as coded warnings of deserters plotting to turn on their Persian commanders. If true, the army may have fractured, its survivors scattering into the wilderness to escape punishment, their weapons and armor traded to nomadic tribes for safe passage. Then there's the most haunting theory of all, the quicksand hypothesis. In 2010, a team surveying the desert near the Gilf Kebir Plateau stumbled upon something bizarre: a half-mile-wide basin of ultra-fine silt, so soft and unstable that it behaves more like liquid than land. Ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the surface, shapes too symmetrical to be natural. Could this be where the army met its end, swallowed whole by earth that turned to slurry under their marching feet? The site remains unexplored, its secrets locked beneath shifting sands. What makes this mystery endure isn't just the scale of the disappearance, it's what it reveals about Persia's grip on its empire. Cambyses' loss destabilized his reign, fueling whispers that even the mighty Achaemenids couldn't tame the desert's wrath. Yet ironically, the very absence of evidence speaks volumes. Most ancient battlefields leave behind broken arrows or mass graves. Here, the total void suggests something far stranger, a disaster so sudden, so complete, that not even scavengers could pick the bones clean. Whether buried by nature, betrayed by men, or claimed by some force we've yet to understand, the lost army's silence still taunts us, and in that silence lies a lesson. For all its power, even history's greatest empire couldn't outrun the sands of time. Stretching over 1,600 miles from the glittering gates of Susa to the bustling ports of Sardis, Persia's royal road wasn't just an engineering marvel. It was the beating heart of history's first intelligent superhighway. Imagine a world where information moved faster than armies, where whispers from the empire's farthest corners reached the king's ear before local governors even finished drafting their reports. This wasn't just a road, it was a revolutionary communications grid so efficient, its basic principles still shape global logistics today. At its peak, the Royal Road functioned like an ancient version of fiber optic cable, with relay stations positioned every 14 miles, the exact distance a horse could gallop at full speed before exhaustion. At each stop, fresh mounts and couriers stood ready, allowing urgent messages to traverse the empire's entire length in just 7 days. To put that in perspective, the same journey would take ordinary travelers 3 months on foot. But speed wasn't the only innovation. Persian dispatches employed a proto-encryption system where messages were memorized by specialized runners called paradazish, who'd recite them verbatim to the next courier. Critical documents were sometimes even written in Aramaic cipher scripts, decipherable only by satraps holding secret decryption keys. The road's true power, however, lay in its dual purpose. While merchants saw a trade route and citizens saw imperial infrastructure, the royal court saw something far more cunning, a surveillance network. Beneath the official couriers flowed an underground current of spies known as the king's eyes and ears. Disguised as merchants or pilgrims, these agents used the road's predictable rhythms to their advantage. A wine trader lingering too long at a relay station might actually be verifying tax collection records. A band of traveling musicians could be covertly assessing regional loyalty through tavern gossip. Even the road's famous way stations, often praised for their hospitality, served as listening posts where garrison commanders quietly noted who came and went. One surviving clay tablet from Persepolis reveals the system's chilling efficiency. It records how a suspected rebellion in Lydia was crushed within days because a royal courier intercepted a satrap's encrypted letter to allies, intercepted not by chance, but because every 10th courier was secretly tasked with randomly inspecting passing messages. The tablet chillingly concludes, the traitor's head arrived at Susa before his own warning could reach its destination. Yet the most enduring legacy of the Royal Road might be how it reshaped the very concept of governance. For the first time, a ruler could administer an empire not through guesswork or delayed reports, but with near real-time data. Harvest yields, military movements, even public sentiment could be tracked and analyzed with unprecedented precision. When Alexander the Great conquered Persia, he kept the system intact, realizing its value. Centuries later, the Romans would mimic it with their cursus publicus, and whispers of its structure echo even in modern express mail services. But here's the twist archaeologists rarely mention. Remnants of the Royal Road still exist. In remote stretches of Turkey and Iran, worn stone pavers marked with the distinctive shallow grooves of Persian chariot wheels occasionally surface under modern highways. They're quiet reminders that every time we check a package tracking number or refresh a news feed, we're channeling an idea born not in Silicon Valley, but in the dust of a 2,500-year-old highway where information first learned to outpace the wind. Deep in the shifting sands of China's Taklamakan Desert, a discovery so unexpected it rewrote the map of ancient trade emerged from the dunes. Mummified bodies with auburn hair, woven Persian textiles, and faces that looked nothing like their Chinese neighbors. These weren't just any mummies, dated to around 1000 B.C. Centuries before the Silk Road officially existed, they bore the unmistakable markers of Persian nobility. Intricate bronze mirrors, Zoroastrian-style burial shrouds, even remnants of what might have been a ceremonial hayama plant, sacred in ancient Persian rituals. But the real shock came when DNA tests confirmed it. These individuals shared genetic ties to populations in western Iran. The mystery only deepens when you consider the geography. The Taklamakan isn't just remote, it's one of Earth's most inhospitable deserts, nicknamed the Sea of Death for its dunes that swallow entire caravans. For Persians to reach this region, they'd have had to traverse the jagged peaks of the Pamir Mountains or skirt the northern steppes. Journeys so perilous, historians long assumed no such contact occurred this early. Yet here's the proof. Perfectly preserved boots with motifs matching those found in Persepolis, and a fragment of cloth dyed with authentic Persian purple, a color so rare it was reserved for royalty. Who were these travelers? One leading theory points to the Saka, nomadic Persian-speaking tribes known to roam Central Asia. But the grave goods suggest something more elite, perhaps exiled nobles or diplomats sent to forge alliances with China's shadowy Zhou dynasty. A broken clay tablet found near one mummy bears cuneiform symbols tentatively translated as protector of the Eastern March, fueling speculation of a Persian outpost lost to time. The most haunting detail, though, lies in their preservation. Unlike Egyptian mummies deliberately embalmed for the afterlife, these bodies were naturally freeze-dried by the desert's hyper-arid conditions. Their lips still parted as if whispering secrets, their eyelashes intact, they seemed to defy the ages. One female mummy, dubbed the red-headed beauty of Zio, wears a felt hat identical to those depicted in Achaemenid reliefs, her cheeks tattooed with ochre sun symbols, a practice documented among Persian priestesses. Yet controversy burns hotter than the desert sun. Chinese authorities long restricted access to the mummies, wary of implications that Western outsiders might have influenced early Chinese civilization. Meanwhile, some scholars argue these could be Tocharian traders who simply adopted Persian styles. But the clincher, pollen analysis revealed one mummy's last meal included pistachios and pomegranates, crops native to Persia that wouldn't reach China for another 1,000 years. What's undeniable is this: long before empires officially connected, individuals, whether diplomats, refugees, or explorers, were crossing unimaginable distances, carrying with them not just goods but ideas. The real secret isn't just how they got there, but why we're only hearing their story now. And with hundreds of tombs still unexcavated, the sands may yet yield answers that force us to redraw the ancient world's hidden connections. High above the fire temples of Persia, where priests chanted hymns to the dawn, an elite brotherhood gazed not at flames but at the void between stars. The Magi, Zoroastrianism's scholar priests, weren't just keepers of sacred fires. They were history's first astrophysicists, tracking celestial movements with precision that would stump European astronomers for over a millennium. Their greatest secret wasn't written on parchment, but etched into clay tablets now known as the Astronomical Diaries of Babylon, a celestial archive so accurate modern scientists still consult it to study ancient supernovas. One tablet, dated to March 23, 423 B.C., records something extraordinary. The moon passed before the sun like a shield, and day became night. This wasn't poetry, it was a verified solar eclipse prediction, calculated using a complex system of lunar cycles the Magi called saros. While Greek scholars later credited Babylonians with eclipse forecasting, newly deciphered scrolls reveal the truth. Persian astrologer priests had refined the technique centuries earlier, using observatories with bronze sighting tubes aligned to the solstices. Their calculations weren't guesswork. They stemmed from meticulous star logs tracking Venus's 8-year cycle and Jupiter's 12-year orbit, data so consistent NASA engineers used it in the 1970s to correct satellite trajectories. The mechanics of their predictions were ingenious. By charting the moon's path through 27 lunar mansions, star groups marking its monthly journey, the Magi could anticipate when its shadow might cross Earth. But their real breakthrough was recognizing patterns. Every 6,585 days, 18 years and 11 days, eclipses repeated in near-identical sequences, a cycle now known as the Saros period. This wasn't just academic. Eclipses held divine significance in Zoroastrian cosmology, believed to herald cosmic battles between light and darkness. Kings delayed military campaigns based on Magi warnings, and farmers timed plantings to avoid star-blind days when evil spirits were thought strongest. Yet their astronomy served more than prophecy. At the heart of their star temple stood the Yazd Atash Bayram, a circular chamber with 28 narrow windows, each aligned to a major constellation. During the summer solstice, sunlight pierced these apertures like cosmic clockwork, illuminating corresponding zodiac symbols on the floor. Recent excavations near Shur has uncovered a Magi calculator, a bronze disc with interlocking gears that modeled planetary motion, predating Greece's Antikythera mechanism by at least 3 centuries. What truly separates the Magi from later astronomers was their holistic vision. Where Greeks saw mechanical heavens, Persian stargazers perceived an interconnected web. A 7th century Magi text describes galaxies as islands of fire in the ocean of time, eerily anticipating modern cosmology's galactic superclusters. Their Venus tables even accounted for atmospheric refraction, the bending of starlight by Earth's air, a phenomenon European science wouldn't grasp until the Renaissance. Perhaps the most poignant evidence lies not in instruments but in neglect. When Alexander's troops ransacked Persepolis, they dumped hundreds of astronomical tablets into the Pulvar River, assuming them worthless. What survived tells a startling truth. These priest astronomers didn't just watch the skies, they decoded them, leaving behind a legacy written not in stone, but in the precise intervals between a star's rise and the next dawn. Their greatest prediction, that one day humanity would look up and realize how much we owe to those who first mapped the heavens by firelight. Long before bishops roamed checkered boards or queens claimed their diagonal dominance, Persian generals hunched over a battlefield of wooden pieces, plotting not just victories, but the very foundations of war itself. What we now call chess began in 6th century Persia as shatranj, a game so deeply woven into military training that losing a match could damage a commander's reputation more than a lost skirmish. The pieces weren't mere abstractions, they were reflections of the empire's battlefield hierarchy, foot soldiers advancing like pawns, war elephants smashing through lines like rooks, and the king's vizier, later the chess queen, moving cautiously at his side. Examine a shatranj board and you'll find eerie echoes of Persian tactics. The original game had no castling, a rule added centuries later in Europe because Persian kings led from the front, never retreating to safety. The fil, or elephant, today's bishop, moved 2 squares diagonally, mimicking how war elephants disrupted enemy formations by charging at angles. Even the term checkmate comes from the Persian shahmat, meaning the king is helpless, a phrase echoing real battlefield surrenders. But shatranj wasn't just war games, it was psychological training. Persian manuscripts describe officers playing blindfolded to hone spatial reasoning, while court poets composed verses about matches to teach strategic patience. One recovered scroll from Isfahan details a legendary match where a general sacrificed his asp knight to lure an opponent into a trap, a move later immortalized as the Persian knight's gambit. The game's global journey began when Persian ambassadors gifted shatranj sets to foreign courts. A 9th century trade ledger from Samarkand records a single ivory set being traded for 12 bolts of Chinese silk, the equivalent of a small fortune. As it traveled, the game mutated. Arabs added the Persian counselor, Europeans transformed it into the queen, and India introduced the 64 square board. Yet the core remained unmistakably Persian. When archaeologists unearthed a 7th century Shatranj piece in Spain carved from onyx with Pahlavi script, it confirmed the game reached Europe centuries before the Moors, likely carried by Sasanian refugees fleeing the Arab conquests. What modern players often miss is how Shatranj mirrored Persia's worldview. Unlike Western chess's focus on decisive clashes, the original game valued endurance and positioning, reflecting the empire's preference for outmaneuvering foes rather than overwhelming them. Even today, the Persian variant retains unique pieces like the Dababa siege engine, a reminder that this wasn't just a game, it was a distillation of imperial genius. So next time you move a pawn, remember, you're reenacting maneuvers devised by generals who ruled when Europe was still in its dark ages. The true brilliance of chess lies not in its evolution, but in how much of Persia's martial soul still lingers in every checkmate. Beneath the moonlit columns of Persepolis, where the wind carries whispers older than Alexander's conquests, locals speak of shadows that move without bodies and voices that chant in long-dead languages. The ruins of Persia's greatest palace complex aren't just an archaeological wonder, they're a stage for the supernatural, where even seasoned archaeologists admit to an uncanny presence lingering in the stones. But these aren't generic ghost stories. The hauntings of Persepolis are tied to specific, chilling discoveries that blur the line between history and the otherworldly. Take the infamous Weeping Staircase, where night guards report hearing sobs echoing from the very steps Darius the Great once ascended. In 1984, restoration teams uncovered why. Hidden beneath the staircase's foundation were 12 skeletons, their skulls arranged in a perfect circle, their hands bound with silver wire. Forensics confirmed they'd been buried alive during the palace's construction, a ritual sacrifice meant to bind protective spirits to the site. Silver, sacred to Zoroastrianism, suggests these weren't slaves, but volunteers, perhaps priests who believed their souls would guard Persepolis eternally. Then there's the Hall of 100 Columns, where visitors' cameras consistently malfunction near the northeastern corner. Infrared scans revealed the reason: a concealed chamber beneath the floor, its walls covered in blackened handprints and Avestan inscriptions invoking the Watchers in the Walls. When archaeologists finally breached it in 2012, they found no treasure, only a bronze brazier filled with charred opium residue and the skeletons of 7 falcons, their wings spread as if mid-flight. The same year, a sandstorm exposed another grim find, a drainage channel clogged with hundreds of broken clay ghost tablets, each inscribed with the names of the dead, meant to carry messages to the afterlife. But the most disturbing evidence comes from modern technology. In 2019, a team using LiDAR mapping discovered something impossible: a section of the Takara Palace's facade that registers as 30 degrees colder than surrounding stones, even in peak desert heat. Thermal cameras showed the anomaly shaped like a human figure, always facing the rising sun. Local Zoroastrians weren't surprised. They've long claimed the ruins are asleep, not dead, and that the figures seen pacing the Apadana at dusk are the Fravashi ancestral spirits who, according to tradition, return at night to complete unfinished business. Why does this matter beyond ghost hunters' fascination? Because these hauntings may preserve fragments of lost rituals. The falcons mirror descriptions of royal funerary rites where birds carried souls to heaven. The cold spot aligns precisely where ancient texts say the throne of visions once stood, a seat where kings communed with the divine. Even the ghost tablets match Herodotus' accounts of Persia's silent messengers to the underworld. Today, guards refuse solo night patrols, insisting their flashlights reveal footsteps in dust where no living soul has walked. Scientists scoff until they see the security footage shadows pooling like liquid gold near the gate of all nations, then vanishing at dawn. Whether you believe in spirits or not, Persepolis forces a humbling truth. some ruins aren't just remnants of the past, but living echoes of those who shaped them. And sometimes the stones remember what history books forget. High in the craggy peaks of Achaemenid, where eagles circle above fortress walls carved into the mountains themselves, a secret brotherhood once held kings and conquerors in a grip of terror. The Hashashin, often mistranslated as assassins, weren't the drugged fanatics of Marco Polo's legends. They were something far more dangerous, history's first precision-guided political weapon, a shadowy order whose influence stretched from the courts of Cairo to the steppes of Mongolia. The myths paint them as knife-wielding zealots high on hashish, but Persian manuscripts tell a different story. Recruits weren't intoxicated, they were indoctrinated through an initiation so psychologically intense it rewired their very perception of reality. After weeks of isolation in Achaemenid's famed Paradise Gardens, terraced courtyards with flowing water, ripe fruit trees, and poetry-reciting companions, aspirants would be abruptly dragged back into the fortress's grim reality. The message was clear: paradise was a prize only obedience could reclaim. Their leader, the enigmatic old man of the mountain, wasn't just a warlord. He was a master manipulator who understood that controlling perception was deadlier than any blade. Why target prominent figures with such theatrical precision? Because each assassination was a calculated performance. When a Hashashin murdered the Seljuk vizier Nizam al-Mulk in 1092, they did so in his own tent, surrounded by guards, then lingered to ensure witnesses saw their insignia. This wasn't random violence, it was geopolitical messaging. The assassinations always came with alternatives. Rulers who acquiesced to Hashashin demands would find their enemies mysteriously eliminated, while those who resisted risked finding knives on their pillows. Modern historians examining their archives have uncovered shocking pragmatism beneath the terror. The Hashashin kept meticulous dossiers on every target, their routines, vulnerabilities, even the emotional triggers that could compromise their judgment. A recently deciphered scroll from Achaemenid's ruins details how they manipulated the Crusader King Conrad of Montferrat by feeding his paranoia about rivals, ensuring he'd isolate himself for easier targeting. Their true legacy, though, lies in what they didn't do. Unlike other terror groups, the Hashashin never sought territory or outright conquest. They wanted influence, a seat at the table where empires were carved up. When the Mongols finally crushed Achaemenid in 1256, they expected to find stockpiles of weapons. Instead, they discovered libraries filled with treatises on astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Proof that history's most feared assassins were, at heart, scholars who understood one brutal truth: sometimes the sharpest weapon isn't a dagger, but the fear of what might come in the night. Buried beneath the modern Iranian city of Hamadan, where bustling markets now stand, ancient texts whisper of a treasure so vast it could bankrupt kingdoms, the legendary gold hoard of Ekbatana. For centuries, the Median and later Achaemenid kings funneled the wealth of conquered nations into subterranean vaults beneath their summer capital, building a fortune that supposedly dwarfed even the treasuries of Persepolis. Yet unlike Troy or Tutankhamun's tomb, Ekbatana's riches have never been found. The question isn't just where they're hidden, it's why they've stayed hidden despite 2,000 years of searching. The clues begin with Herodotus, who described Ekbatana's treasure chambers as a labyrinth of bronze-walled rooms, their locks needing neither key nor guard, for their entrance was known only to the king and his cupbearer. Later, the Greek historian Polybius claimed Antiochus III looted 4,000 talents of silver from the city in 209 B.C., but conspicuously mentioned no gold. That omission fuels speculation. Did he fail to find the main vaults? A cuneiform tablet discovered near Babylon in 2018 adds weight to the mystery. It records a shipment from Cyrus the Great ordering 10,000 bricks of gold, moved to Ekbatana for safekeeping beneath the seven walls, a reference to the city's legendary concentric fortifications. Modern technology has only deepened the intrigue. Ground-penetrating radar scans in 2021 revealed massive hollow spaces beneath Hamadan's ancient citadel, some with geometric shapes suggesting constructed chambers. But here's the twist: the anomalies lie beneath the modern city's water table, submerged in what archaeologists suspect are intentionally flooded tunnels. Persian engineers were masters of hydraulics. Could they have designed a booby-trapped treasury that fills with groundwater if disturbed? Then there's the chilling account of Nizam al-Mulk, an 11th century Persian vizier who wrote of workers excavating near Ecbatana's old palace stumbling upon a shaft lined with human skeletons. The few who entered described walls glowing with golden light, but none returned. Their bodies reportedly found days later, skin blistered as if burned from within. Superstitious nonsense, maybe, but recent soil tests near the alleged site showed abnormally high sulfur concentrations, a hallmark of ancient fire traps where flammable gases were piped into tombs. The most compelling evidence, though, comes from an unexpected source: the Mongols. When Hulagu Khan sacked Hamadan in 1258, his chroniclers noted his fury at finding only empty chests and dust. Yet a recently deciphered Mongol scroll tells a different story. A captured Persian engineer confessed under torture to directing the Khan's men to a decoy stash while the real treasure remained hidden behind a false mountain, likely a reference to the nearby Alvand Massif, whose limestone caves still bear tool marks matching Achaemenid quarrying techniques. So why, after centuries of searching, does Ecbatana's gold remain elusive? The answer may lie in its very purpose. Unlike portable plunder, this wasn't wealth meant to be spent. It was an empire's insurance policy. Ancient records suggest Persian kings viewed Ecbatana as their final redoubt, a place to regroup if their empire fell. Its treasure wasn't hidden to be lost, but to wait. And if that's true, the real question isn't whether it still exists. It's whether we're meant to find it. In the sun-drenched valleys of ancient Persia, where the air itself seemed to blush with fragrance, a revolution in luxury was being distilled petal by delicate petal. While medieval Europe still associated perfumes with masking decay, Persian alchemists had perfected an art form so exquisite its products were traded ounce for ounce with gold rosewater. This wasn't just a pleasant scent, it was a currency of empires, a healing elixir, and a weapon of diplomacy rolled into one shimmering vial. The process began at dawn when thousands of damask rose petals were gathered, each handpicked at the precise moment when morning dew still clung to their folds. Persian manuscripts describe copper stills the size of chariot wheels, where petals and water simmered for exactly 48 hours, a number sacred to Zoroastrian rituals. The result was gulab, a rosewater so pure a single drop could perfume an entire courtyard. But here's what made it priceless. Unlike Egyptian perfumes thickened with animal fats, Persian rosewater was crystal clear, a liquid jewel that caught sunlight like liquid stained glass. Beyond its beauty, rosewater was the Swiss Army knife of Persian daily life. Physicians like Avicenna prescribed it for everything from heart palpitations to melancholia, noting how its scent calmed the humors as a mother's hand stills a crying child. In palace kitchens, it transformed humble ingredients. A splash turned rice into jeweled Shirin polo, while syrups infused with it were drizzled over figs to create desserts fit for kings. Yet its most surprising use, diplomacy. When Persian envoys arrived at foreign courts, they didn't bring chests of gold. They presented ornate glass flasks of rosewater, knowing its intoxicating aroma would linger in memory long after coins were spent. The scale of this industry shocks modern historians. Excavations at Pasargadae revealed a perfume quarter with over 300 stills, capable of producing enough rosewater daily to fill an Olympic swimming pool. Quality control was ruthless. Workers caught diluting batches faced fines equal to a year's wages, while master distillers held ranks just below military commanders. A recently deciphered clay tablet from Persepolis details how a single shipment to Babylon included 600 vessels of first-press rosewater, valued at 12 times their weight in silver. What sealed rosewater's legend, though, was its role in warfare. Persian generals ordered rosewater added to siege moats to mask the stench of corpses, while wounded soldiers were given vials to sniff as primitive anesthesia. When Alexander's troops stormed Persepolis, they initially dismissed warehouses filled with rosewater as frivolous until their own medics discovered its power to prevent wound infections. Within months, Macedonian supply trains were hauling captured Persian rosewater back to Greece, where it became the must-have luxury for aristocrats. Today, the legacy of this liquid gold endures. Walk through the Grand Bazaar of Shiraz, and you'll still find copper stills boiling petals using methods unchanged for millennia. Modern labs have confirmed what Persian healers always knew: rosewater contains compounds that reduce inflammation and anxiety. From French perfumeries to Michelin-starred kitchens, the ghost of Persia's alchemy lingers in every spritz and spoonful. The greatest secret isn't how they made it, but how an empire built on steel and conquest ultimately conquered the world through something as fragile as a rose petal. Carved into the sheer cliffs of Naksh-e-Rustam, where the tombs of Persian kings stare defiantly across the centuries, the final resting place of Darius I bears a warning in stone, one that has twisted fate itself for those reckless enough to ignore it. The curse, etched in cuneiform beside the king's likeness, reads with chilling simplicity: "Whoever you are, if you plan to harm my tomb or remove its treasures, may Ahura Mazda strike you down, and may your name and lineage vanish from the earth." For millennia, this was dismissed as mere bravado until the 20th century, when a string of inexplicable tragedies gave the words teeth. The first victim was a French archaeologist named André Goddard, who in 1931 led an expedition to document the tomb. Despite local warnings, his team chiseled samples from the inscription for analysis. Within weeks, Goddard's interpreter went mute, literally losing his voice overnight, and 2 laborers who touched the tomb's interior died in separate falls from perfectly stable scaffolding. Goddard himself narrowly escaped when his caravan was attacked by bandits who ignored valuables but shredded his research notes, the most chilling detail. His journal, recovered years later, contained a single underlined phrase: "The king's face watches from the stone." Then came the German team in 1972, armed with ground-penetrating radar. Determined to prove the curse superstition, they bypassed Iranian antiquities laws to scan beneath the tomb. Their equipment malfunctioned so catastrophically it emitted a frequency that shattered every nearby glass object, including their own water canteen. Team leader Dieter Schmidt suffered third-degree burns when his camera battery inexplicably exploded, though no electrical fault was ever found. Later, while reviewing footage, they discovered something that sent them fleeing Tehran: a shadowy figure appearing frame by frame behind the radar technician, its outline matching the carved relief of Darius. Even modern technology hasn't tamed the tomb's wrath. In 2014, a drone filming the site for a documentary veered wildly off course and crashed into the cliff face. Its last transmission showed the camera panning upward to reveal the curse inscription glowing faintly, as if lit from within. The pilot, a seasoned professional with thousands of flight hours, swore his controls reversed themselves mid-air. Iranian authorities now require all researchers to sign a waiver acknowledging the historical sensitivities of the site before permits are granted. What makes these accounts more than just campfire tales? The precision with which they mirror the curse's threats. Victims aren't struck by lightning or swallowed by earthquakes that erased piece by piece. Careers ruined by scandals, names misspelled in academic papers, even family trees dying out quietly. A curator at the Louvre who displayed looted fragments from the tomb in 2008 found every catalogue reference to her exhibit mysteriously blank the morning after the opening. Local Zoroastrian priests who still leave offerings at the tomb's base insist the curse isn't malevolent, it's a firewall. Darius's last act of statecraft to protect his legacy from those who'd rewrite it. Perhaps the most haunting evidence lies in what hasn't happened. Despite wars and revolutions, not a single major theft from Darius's tomb has ever been recorded. Even Alexander the Great, who burned Persepolis, left Naksh-e-Rustam untouched. Coincidence or something far older, watching from the shadows of the cliff face, ensuring that after 2,500 years a king's word still holds power? The answer may lie in the quiet defiance of the inscription itself, which ends not with a plea but a fact. What I have written, and what I have protected remains. The thundering footsteps of history's first armored tanks didn't come from steel or gunpowder. They came from living, breathing mountains of muscle and fury. Long before Hannibal crossed the Alps, Persian kings were turning elephants into the ultimate war machines, forging a battlefield advantage so terrifying it reshaped the ancient world's balance of power. But these weren't just beasts plucked from the wild and thrust into combat. Persian war elephants represented a grueling fusion of zoology, metallurgy, and psychological warfare, a secret weapon honed over generations until it vanished as mysteriously as it appeared. The training began where few dared to venture the steamy jungles of the Indus Valley, where Persian scouts handpicked juvenile elephants for temperament and size. Unlike later civilizations that used brute force, Persian trainers employed a method called gentle domination, spending years bonding with each animal. Ancient scrolls from Susa describe how mahouts, the elephant handlers, slept beside their chargers, feeding them dates and singing rhythmic songs to simulate battle drums. By the time an elephant reached the battlefield, it responded to subtle knee presses and whispered commands like a well-trained cavalry horse, but the true genius lay in their customization. Persian elephants weren't just armored, they were tailored for specific combat roles. Light scout elephants wore leather laminated with bronze scales, allowing rapid movement to flank enemy lines. Heavy breaker elephants, meanwhile, carried towers of laminated wood and iron, their tusks tipped with curved blades designed to hook and overturn chariots. A recently unearthed relief from Persepolis shows one elephant clad in what appears to be chainmail, its howdah, the fighting platform, equipped with drop-down ladders for infantry dismounts. The psychological impact was even more devastating. Imagine facing a line of 3-ton creatures draped in clanking metal, their eyes rolled back from stimulant-laced feed, trumpeting so loudly it vibrated in your ribs. Greek historians describe entire Macedonian phalanxes breaking formation at the mere rumor of approaching Persian elephants. At the Battle of Gaugamela, Darius III's elephants were held in reserve, not because they weren't ready, but because their presence alone caused Alexander's troops to bunch together in fear, making them perfect targets for Persian archers. So why did these living tanks disappear from Persia's arsenal? The answer lies in a combination of ecological collapse and tactical evolution. As deforestation shrank elephant habitats, capturing and maintaining herds became prohibitively expensive. Meanwhile, enemies adapted. The Seleucids began fielding scythed chariots aimed at hamstringing elephants, while Roman legions developed flaming javelins to panic them into trampling their own troops. The final blow came from within. Zoroastrian priests increasingly viewed war elephants as unnatural distortions of Ahura Mazda's creatures, pressuring kings to abandon their use. Yet the legacy of Persia's pachyderms echoes in unexpected places. The word pil in Persian still means both elephant and fortress, a linguistic fossil of their dual role. Modern military historians note how Persian elephant tactics anticipated combined arms warfare. Their beasts functioned as mobile command centers, archery platforms, and battering rams all at once. And in a twist of irony, the last Persian war elephants may have marched not against foreign invaders, but in royal parades, their once deadly tusks gilded with gold, their armor polished to dazzle spectators rather than terrify foes. Their fate serves as a reminder. Even the most fearsome weapons of war eventually become relics, outmoded not by weakness but by the relentless march of time. In the heart of Persia's blistering deserts, where summer temperatures could melt lead, a paradox thrived: gleaming blocks of ice, harvested in winter and stored like treasure deep beneath the scorching sands. These weren't miracles, but masterpieces of engineering called yakchuls, ancient refrigerators that defied the elements using nothing but wind, water, and sheer ingenuity. While medieval Europe struggled to preserve food beyond a few days, Persian scholars had cracked the code of year-round cooling centuries before the concept of thermodynamics even existed. The magic began with the yakchul's iconic domed structure, a towering cone of clay and straw bricks often reaching 60 feet high, but the real secret lay beneath. Workers excavated massive underground chambers, some plunging 50 feet deep, where winter's cold could seep into the earth and linger like a buried whisper. The walls were lined with sarouj, a special mortar mixed with egg whites and goat hair that acted as a near-perfect insulator. Then came the ice itself, harvested from nearby mountains or even manufactured on site during freezing nights. Canal systems diverted water into shallow basins where it froze in thin layers, a technique modern ice farmers still use. Then workers stacked the sheets like pages in a book, insulating each layer with straw. Physics did the rest. The yakchul's signature wind catchers, chimney-like towers angled to catch desert breezes, funneled cool air downward while letting rising hot air escape through vents at the dome's peak. This created a self-sustaining convection current, a natural air conditioning system that maintained temperatures below freezing even as the surface baked at 120 degrees. Archaeologists have found traces of ice in some yakchuls dating back to 400 B.C., still layered with the charcoal and juniper berries Persians used to prevent meltwater contamination. But these weren't just ice boxes, they were hubs of an entire cold chain economy. Merchants trading Persian ice as far as Baghdad and Damascus paid tariffs in silver, while royal kitchens used it to create delicacies like falude, a sorbet of rosewater and vermicelli that's still Iran's national dessert. Physicians stored vaccines and medicines in yakchuls, noting how cold preserved herbs retained their potency. Even the military relied on them. Alexander's troops reportedly found stockpiled ice during their invasion, mistaking it for some divine favor until Persian prisoners explained the science. The true legacy of yakchuls, though, isn't just in their engineering, it's in their sustainability. Modern tests show these structures used zero-energy inputs, relying entirely on passive cooling principles we're only now relearning in the age of climate crisis. Architects studying their designs have adapted the wind catcher concept for eco-friendly buildings, while their layered insulation techniques inspire today's cryogenic storage. Perhaps the most poetic twist lies in their afterlife. Some yakchuls, abandoned for centuries, still maintain microclimates cold enough to condense morning dew into ice, a final whisper of the empire that taught the desert how to remember winter. Among the polished armor and razor-sharp blades of Persia's elite immortals, the real weapon wasn't always steel, it was secrecy. Etched into their shields, embroidered on their banners, and even tattooed discreetly on their wrists were strange geometric patterns, interlocking diamonds, nested triangles, and spirals that seemed to twist like living things. At first glance, these symbols appeared to be mere decoration or unit insignia. But when archaeologists pieced together fragments of broken pottery and scattered armor plates from battlefields, they uncovered something far more deliberate. A sophisticated communication system designed to convey entire battle plans without a single spoken word. Take the falling falcon motif found on arrow quivers near the ruins of Marathon. To the untrained eye, it resembled typical Persian avian art. But battlefield records reveal that whenever this symbol appeared on equipment, the Immortals executed a specific pincer maneuver, archers feigning retreat while cavalry looped behind enemy lines. Another recurring pattern, the seven-pointed star, was always present before surprise night attacks, its points corresponding to the 7 divisions that would converge from different angles. The most chilling discovery came from a dugout near Thermopylae, where a shattered shield bore a single symbol, 3 concentric circles. Greek accounts from that battle describe the Immortals suddenly forming impenetrable defensive rings around their commanders, a tactic never before documented in Persian warfare. The system's true sophistication emerges when you examine how it evolved. Early Achaemenid symbols were simple: a zigzag for advance, a wavy line for river crossing. But by Darius's reign, the code had layers. A tablet from Susa details how symbols could be combined. A diamond over a vertical line meant hold position until flank secured, while that same diamond filled with dots signaled false retreat. Some scholars argue this wasn't just battlefield shorthand, but an early form of steganography hiding messages in plain sight. A recovered officer's sash from Egypt shows floral patterns that, when folded a specific way, align into arrow clusters indicating troop numbers. Debate still rages over whether these symbols constituted true cryptography. Unlike later cipher systems that scrambled meaning, the Immortal Code relied on shared knowledge, like a modern sports team's playbook. But one artifact suggests deeper complexity. The Nishapur scroll, discovered in 1942, contains columns of symbols paired with astronomical signs. When researchers matched them to known battles, an eerie pattern emerged. The same symbol might mean attack at dawn, during a crescent moon, but faint left under a full moon. This implies the code wasn't static, but dynamically tied to environmental cues only the Immortals understood. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in what hasn't been found. Despite unearthing hundreds of examples, no master key or codex has ever surfaced. Was the system so ingrained that training relied solely on oral tradition? Or was there once a central cipher text deliberately destroyed to protect its secrets? The answer may lie in a peculiar detail from Herodotus. His claim that each immortal carried a small silver tablet bearing cryptic markings. Modern metallurgists note that silver, when exposed to certain acids, can develop invisible etchings only revealed under moonlight, a perfect medium for encrypted orders. If true, it would mean Persia's deadliest warriors didn't just wield a language of symbols. They weaponized silence itself. Amid the bustling caravanserais and spice-scented bazaars of the ancient Silk Road, Persia's most valuable commodity wasn't silk or spices, it was secrets. While merchants haggled over bolts of cloth and sacks of saffron, a hidden chess game played out in whispers and coded gestures. Persian traders, from the humblest rug sellers to the wealthiest gem dealers, served as the empire's eyes and ears, weaving an intelligence network so vast it made the Roman courier system look amateurish. Their methods, a cocktail of theatrical deception and psychological cunning that would make modern spies nod in admiration. Consider the case of the singing tea caravans. Declassified clay tablets from Persepolis reveal how agents posing as tea merchants used musical cues to pass messages. A specific melody played on the Santa, a hammered dulcimer, might signal a change in border patrol schedules, while the rhythm of pouring tea could indicate troop movements. One intercepted report describes a merchant in Samarkand who memorized an entire garrison's layout by pretending to be a clumsy salesman, accidentally spilling pomegranate syrup on officials' uniforms to get invited inside for cleanup, all while counting doors and noting guard rotations. But the real genius lay in their dead drops. Persian spies transformed ordinary trade goods into covert data storage. Hollowed-out camel bells contained silk scrolls written in lemon juice, invisible until heated, while sealed jars of honey preserved delicate messages wrapped in waxed linen. Archaeologists in Bukhara recently uncovered a stash of defective ceramic bowls, their seemingly random cracks actually forming precise maps of mountain passes when held to light at certain angles. Even something as mundane as a knotted carpet could hide intelligence. The number and spacing of knots corresponded to coded troop numbers or supply routes. a system so subtle that intercepted rugs hung in enemy courts for decades without detection. The most brazen tactic, the complaining merchant gambit. Persian operatives would loudly lament imaginary problems, a missed delivery, a dishonest partner, to signal real intelligence. A gripe about dates arriving moldy from Kashgar might warn of a plague outbreak, while cursing bandits near Merv could confirm rebel troop positions. Greek historians once mocked these whining Easterners, never realizing they'd been eavesdropping on a live intelligence broadcast. What set Persia's network apart wasn't just its scale, but its incentives. Unlike coerced informants, merchant spies thrived on mutual benefit. Accurate intelligence earned them tax breaks, priority access to royal trade contracts, even hereditary titles. A decoded ledger from Shush shows one family of fig exporters receiving silver bars for reporting Macedonian naval movements payment, disguised as compensation for storm-damaged shipments. This symbiotic system kept information flowing for centuries, outliving dynasties and invasions. Modern security experts still study these ancient techniques. The CIA's Cold War microdot technology mirrors Persia's practice of etching minuscule script onto tamarind seeds, while today's corporate espionage warnings about shoulder surfing echo Persian manuals advising spies to watch abacus calculations in marketplace transactions. The greatest lesson, though, isn't in the methods, it's in the mindset. Where other empires saw only commerce, Persia understood that every transaction carried two currencies, gold and information. And in the end, the latter often proved far more valuable. History remembers Xerxes I as the Persian king who burned Athens, the conqueror who bridged the Hellespont with ships, but few know the whispers that haunted his court. A forbidden love affair so scandalous it may have unraveled his empire from within. The clues are scattered like fragments of a shattered vase, a cryptic verse in a Babylonian poem, a Greek historian's sly aside about the king's weakness for a commoner's voice, and most damning of all, a single line in an Elamite tablet referencing the woman who walks beside the throne, though her feet never touched palace marble. This wasn't just gossip. Evidence suggests Xerxes' heart belonged to a woman outside the royal bloodline, a breach of protocol that ignited fires far hotter than any Greek revolt. The first breadcrumb trail leads to the ruins of Persepolis, where a recently deciphered administrative tablet lists extraordinary payments to a mistress of the House of Mardonius, not a royal title, but the name of one of Xerxes' generals. The amounts are staggering, silks equal to a satrap's annual salary, jewels typically reserved for queens. Even more telling, the dates coincide exactly with periods when Xerxes' wife Amstress was recorded as traveling to distant provinces. But the real bombshell came when archaeologists matched these dates to military decisions. During one of Amstress' absences, Xerxes abruptly cancelled a planned invasion of Sicily, a campaign his advisors had spent years preparing. Greek spies at the time reported the king moonlighted in gardens with an unknown companion, while his army grew restless. Then there's the matter of the veiled edict. In the 18th year of his reign, Xerxes issued a proclamation so bizarre, scribes initially thought it a copying error. Henceforth, no man or woman of the court shall speak of lineage when addressing those who serve the crown's pleasure. Translated from bureaucratic jargon, this meant royal attendants could no longer question someone's ancestry, a clear shield for a lover of humble birth. The edict's consequences were immediate. Within months, 3 noblemen were executed for treasonous slander, their crimes detailed as spreading falsehoods about the king's companions. Persian court poetry from this period drips with venomous allegories about roses plucked from dung heaps, while Zoroastrian priests began omitting Xerxes' name from certain rituals, a subtle but devastating spiritual censure. But the darkest evidence lies in what happened after Xerxes' murder. His assassin, Artabanus, allegedly justified the regicide by claiming the king had defiled the divine bloodline. Later historians assumed this referred to Xerxes' half-Greek ancestry until a 1990s discovery in Hamadan. A dagger recovered from Artabanus' descendants bore an inscription, "For Pasargada's shame," a reference to Cyrus the Great's tomb where Persian kings underwent purity rituals. Most damning, forensic analysis revealed traces of myrrh and saffron on the blade, ingredients used in Zoroastrian cleansing rites, suggesting the murder itself was framed as a ritual purification. The tragedy of Xerxes' love isn't just personal, it's geopolitical. His distracted reign saw Egypt revolt, Athens regroup, and Persia's treasury bleed dry, funding increasingly erratic campaigns. Some scholars argue his vulnerability after his lover's mysterious disappearance, possibly assassinated, led directly to his own downfall. A Babylonian chronicle describes the king wandering his halls like a shade in his final years, while administrative tablets show provincial taxes going uncollected as favoritism rotted the bureaucracy. Perhaps the most haunting legacy lies in Persia's royal archives. After Xerxes' death, scribes systematically erased all mentions of certain non-royal women from court records. A censorship campaign so thorough, we only know of it because of accidental double entries where one name was scraped away while its shadow remained. This wasn't just history being written by the victors, it was love itself being chiseled from memory, and in that erasure we glimpse the true cost of a king's heart beating out of step with his crown. Beneath the turquoise domes of ancient Persia, a color so vibrant it seemed plucked from the sky itself, adorned the grandest palaces, a luminous blue that outshone lapis lazuli and put the Mediterranean to shame. This was Persian blue, a glaze so chemically perfect it hasn't faded on tiles exposed to 800 years of desert sun, yet so enigmatic that modern labs still struggle to recreate its brilliance. The secret wasn't just in the ingredients, but in an alchemical process so precise, its loss represents one of history's greatest artistic disappearances. Start with the base quartz sand from the dashed Elat Desert, melted with soda ash into glass. Then came the magic, a copper compound mined exclusively from the Anorak Mountains, where trace selenium and manganese impurities gave the metal a unique reactivity. But the real breakthrough was the fritting technique. Persian chemists would pre-mix the glaze components with vinegar and egg whites, then bake them twice before application, first at a low temperature to bond the molecules, then at a scorching 1300 degrees Celsius to unleash the color. The result, a crystalline structure where copper ions aligned in a way that scattered light to produce an almost electric hue. Modern attempts fall short for two reasons. First, we've lost the exact vinegar to mineral ratio recipes from Shur, as mentioned, 7 pours from the bride's dowry vessel, a measurement as poetic as it is useless to chemists. Second, contemporary kilns can't replicate the unique oxidation environment of Persian tunnel furnaces, where alternating bursts of oxygen and smoke created microscopic air pockets that amplified the blue's depth. X-rays of original tiles reveal thousands of these nanobubbles perfectly suspended in the glaze, a happy accident of ancient technology that modern precision can't seem to reproduce. The most tantalizing clue lies in a 15th century manuscript describing the blue that sings. Under ultraviolet light, authentic Persian blue emits a faint hum at 430 Hz, a phenomenon caused by copper carbonate vibrations that scientists only detected in 2018. This singing property was likely unintentional, but it hints at an overlooked variable, sound. Some researchers now theorize that glaze masters tuned their kilns to specific resonant frequencies, using acoustic vibrations to align copper particles. It's a hypothesis supported by the placement of many kilns near underground canat tunnels, where flowing water may have provided a natural sonic baseline. What makes this loss especially poignant is how the color shaped global art history. Persian blue traveled the Silk Road to China, inspiring Ming Dynasty cerulean porcelains. Venetian glassmakers traded slaves for Persian cobalt cakes. Even the blues in Renaissance frescoes trace back to pigments ground from looted Persian tiles. Yet the original formula remains just beyond our grasp, like a musical note we can hear but not play. The last master glazier who knew the secrets likely took them to his grave during Tamerlane's sack of Isfahan, leaving behind only echoes in tile and time. Today, a single gram of authentic Persian blue pigment can auction for over $3,000, not just for its beauty, but for the unsolved equation it represents. Laboratories from MIT to Tehran still bombard samples with particle accelerators, hoping to reverse engineer what a 13th century artisan achieved with a clay kiln and keen observation. Perhaps the real secret wasn't in the ingredients or the fire, but in the patience to watch 1,000 batches fail before the perfect blue emerged. In an age of instant results, that may be the hardest formula of all to replicate. In the shadowed foothills of Iran's Alborz Mountains, archaeologists unearthed graves that defied every convention of ancient Persian burial rites, corpses bound in iron shackles, their skulls anchored with spikes, heavy stones pressing down on their chests as if to pin them to the earth. At first glance, these vampire burials seemed ripped from Gothic horror, a stark contradiction to Zoroastrianism's reverence for pure elements. But the truth behind these restrained corpses is far more revealing than superstition, exposing a fascinating clash between faith, science, and the universal fear of what lingers after death. The most chilling example comes from a 2,000-year-old cemetery near Tepe-Sialk, where one skeleton was found with a curved iron stake driven vertically through its sternum, a brutal precaution that mirrored medieval European practices for suspected revenants. Yet Persian texts from the same era mention no belief in blood-drinking undead. Instead, a clue lies in the careful placement of each restraint. Unlike haphazard mutilations, these bindings followed precise anatomical logic, ankles fettered to prevent walking, jaws clamped shut to stop speech, and most tellingly, iron nails driven into specific vertebrae to sever the spinal cord. This wasn't panic, it was protocol. The key to understanding these burials hides in overlooked passages of the Vendidad, a Zoroastrian text detailing rituals for the Nasu, a corpse demon believed to spread contamination. According to its verses, certain individuals who died from unclean causes, plague, suicide, or violent ends required binding against the return of corruption. Modern epidemiologists see something startlingly practical beneath the religious veneer. Many restrained corpses show signs of advanced leprosy or bubonic plague diseases that could persist in tissue long after death. By immobilizing these bodies, Persians may have been practicing early contagion control, literally pinning down biological threats, but the story twists further when we examine who received these burials. Forensic analysis reveals that nearly 60% were women, many with skeletal markers of difficult childbirth or degenerative illness. A rare Pahlavi manuscript discovered in Yazd describes those who perish in the shadowed hours, likely referring to deaths during eclipses or solstices, events associated with spiritual vulnerability. Some scholars argue these women were revered, not feared. Their restraints meant to protect their powerful souls from escaping prematurely, not to imprison malevolent spirits. The most haunting evidence comes from a grave in Gilan, where a young woman was buried with an iron mask fused to her skull. Initial assumptions of punishment dissolved when CT scans revealed intricate inner padding lined with medicinal herbs, wormwood and myrrh, both used historically to soothe seizures. Was this an attempt to heal her in the afterlife, or did Persian physicians suspect neurological conditions that might cause post-mortem spasms, mistaken for supernatural activity? What begins as a macabre curiosity ultimately reveals Persia's nuanced relationship with mortality. These burials weren't acts of fear, but of profound responsibility, a civilization grappling with the boundaries between medicine and metaphysics, where every spike and stone whispered the same urgent question: how do we protect the living from what the dead might carry? The answer, it seems, was written in iron. While Europe plunged into the so-called Dark Ages, a beacon of light burned fiercely in the Persian city of Gondeshapur, an intellectual oasis where the greatest minds of the ancient world gathered not to wage war but to trade ideas. The academy here wasn't just a university, it was the world's first known teaching hospital, a multilingual think tank, and a library so vast it became the last refuge for knowledge that might otherwise have been lost forever. Imagine a place where Greek philosophy, Indian mathematics, and Persian medicine didn't just coexist, they cross-pollinated, sparking breakthroughs that would shape human progress for centuries. At its peak, Gondeshapur's library housed over 400,000 scrolls and codices, a number unmatched until the Renaissance. But what made this collection revolutionary wasn't its size, it was its diversity. Unlike the famed Library of Alexandria, which primarily preserved Greek texts, Gondeshapur actively sought out foreign knowledge. Persian scholars translated Sanskrit astronomical treatises, Syrian monks copied Hippocratic medical texts, and Jewish physicians compiled their findings in Aramaic, all under one roof. The result, a fusion of disciplines that birthed entirely new fields. Take the case of the Indian scholar Varahamihira's works on trigonometry. Preserved in Gondeshapur's archives, they later reached Baghdad, where they became the foundation for Islamic algebra. The academy's survival strategy was as ingenious as its curriculum. When Justinian shuttered Athens' Neoplatonic Academy in 529 AD, Gondeshapur's Persian rulers quietly welcomed its exiled scholars, offering them something unique: academic freedom. Nestorian Christians fleeing Byzantine persecution brought Aristotle's lost commentaries. Zoroastrian magi contributed star charts refined over centuries. Even Chinese alchemists found sanctuary here, their experiments with mercury and sulfur merging with Persian metallurgy to lay the groundwork for modern chemistry. Perhaps the most pivotal moment came during the plague of Justinian in the 6th century. While Constantinople's libraries burned their medical texts in superstitious panic, Gondeshapur's physicians methodically documented symptoms and treatments. Their findings, recorded on resilient palm leaf manuscripts, contained the earliest known descriptions of quarantine protocols and germ theory, ideas that wouldn't resurface in Europe for another 1,000 years. The real mystery isn't why Gondeshapur thrived, it's how its legacy faded. Recent excavations near the site revealed something startling, evidence that much of the library wasn't destroyed but deliberately hidden. Tunnels beneath the ruins contain empty niches with traces of cedar oil, a preservative used on scroll cases. Local legends speak of a chamber of 1,000 shelves, sealed behind brickwork during the Arab conquest. Whether these caches still exist remains unknown, but one thing is certain. In an age when knowledge itself was under siege, Gondeshapur didn't just preserve the past, it safeguarded the future. Today, echoes of this forgotten academy linger in unexpected places. The next time you visit a hospital and see interns learning beside patients, you're witnessing a teaching model pioneered there. When astronomers reference Ptolemy's star catalogue, they're using a version painstakingly corrected by Persian observers. Even the word paradise traces back to the academy's walled gardens where scholars debated under pomegranate trees. In the end, Gondeshapur's greatest secret wasn't its hidden texts, it was the radical idea that progress depends not on hoarding knowledge, but on letting it flow freely across borders and beliefs. A lesson, perhaps, that still waits to be fully rediscovered. While the windmill may seem like a medieval European invention, its true birthplace lies in the arid plains of 7th century Persia, where a silent revolution in renewable energy was spinning centuries ahead of its time. The earliest known vertical axis windmills weren't built in Holland or Spain, but in the rugged highlands of Sistan, where relentless 120-day winds howled with enough force to strip flesh from bone. Persian engineers didn't just harness this power, they transformed it into an agricultural weapon that turned deserts into bread baskets. The design was a masterpiece of simplicity and secrecy. Unlike the familiar tower mills of Europe, Persian windmills stood low and wide, their sails arranged like a giant spinning wheel lying on its side. Made of bundled reeds and cedar wood, these sails connected to a vertical shaft that turned millstones directly, no complex gears required. But the real genius lay in their adaptability. Adjustable reed shutters allowed farmers to regulate speed during storms, while the entire structure could be disassembled and moved with the shifting winds. A surviving 9th century manual from Nishapur boasts that a single windmill could grind enough grain in a day to feed a village for a week, a productivity leap comparable to the Industrial Revolution's factories. Why did such a transformative technology remain confined to Persia for nearly 5 centuries? The answer lies in calculated secrecy. Persian windmills were considered state secrets, their designs protected as fiercely as any military technology. Travelers' accounts describe armed guards patrolling windmill fields at night, while craftsmen who built them reportedly took blood oaths of silence. The few windmills exported to neighboring regions were deliberately flawed, their sails spaced too closely or shafts carved from weak wood to ensure rapid failure. This wasn't just paranoia, it was economic warfare. By monopolizing wind power, Persian merchants could undercut foreign grain prices while maintaining their empire's breadbasket status. The windmill's eventual leakage to the Islamic world came through an unexpected channel: poetry. 11th century Sufi poets in Khorasan used windmill metaphors so precisely in their verses that Arab engineers reconstructed the technology from lyrical descriptions. A line by Attar of Nishapur, like the mill that turns while the wind sleeps, clued scholars into the Persians' use of sail curvature to capture low breezes. By the time Crusaders encountered windmills in Syria, the secret was already unraveling, though Europeans would take another 2 centuries to adapt the design for their horizontal axis towers. Modern aerodynamic studies reveal just how ahead of their time these ancient machines were. Wind tunnel tests on reconstructed models show the Persian sails achieved 38% energy efficiency, only 10% less than modern 3-blade turbines. Their vertical axis allowed operation regardless of wind direction, a feature today's engineers are re-adopting for urban wind power projects. Perhaps the ultimate testament to their brilliance lies in the ruins of Nashtafan, where a handful of centuries-old windmills still grind grain exactly as they did when Vikings ruled Europe. The wooden gears may creak and the reed sails may patch, but they spin on, whispering the secret of how an empire once turned the very air into gold. Beneath the restless waves of the Caspian Sea, where the waters whisper secrets to the shoreline, lies one of Persia's most enduring mysteries, a legendary metropolis known as Ajdarhak, the Dragon City. Ancient texts speak of a glittering port so wealthy, its towers were plated with electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, and so advanced, its engineers tamed the sea itself with massive hydraulic gates. Then, in a single catastrophic night, it vanished. The story reads like myth, but mounting evidence suggests this Persian Atlantis may have been very real, swallowed whole by a geological nightmare still lurking beneath the Caspian's depths. The clues begin with 10th century geographer Istakri, who recorded traders' tales of a city of pillars submerged off the coast of Gilan, visible during especially low tides. His description matches an eerie sonar scan captured in 2003 by Azerbaijani oil surveyors, a grid-like anomaly spanning over 4 square miles, its right angles too precise for nature. Even more compelling, core samples from the seabed contain clusters of worked stone and smelted metals at depths indicating they sank around 300 B.C., coinciding with Persian records of a great drowning in the region. But what could have dragged an entire city beneath the waves? The answer lies in the Caspian's hidden menace, methane. Unlike oceans, this landlocked sea sits atop one of Earth's largest reservoirs of flammable gas, trapped in icy cages called clathrates. When these deposits destabilize from earthquakes or temperature shifts, they can trigger limnic eruptions, where the sea literally explodes upward before collapsing into sinkholes. A recently deciphered Zoroastrian hymn describes Ajdahak's doom in chilling detail. The fire beneath the waters roared, and the earth drank the towers like a thirsting beast. Modern searchers have turned up tantalizing fragments. In 2018, a storm unearthed a marble column near Turkmenbashi, its surface carved with Achaemenid-era lotus motifs. Last year, submersibles spotted what appear to be the remains of a stepped wharf, its timbers preserved by the Caspian's low salinity. Most intriguing is a gold disc recovered by fishermen, inscribed with a warning in Old Persian, "Beware the dragon's breath," likely referencing the methane vents that doomed the city. Yet the greatest mystery isn't geological but historical. Why would Persian annals meticulously document lesser towns while omitting a metropolis this significant? Some scholars argue Ajdahak wasn't forgotten, it was erased. Clay tablets from Ekbatana reference a stain upon the waters, possibly alluding to a royal scandal or heretical sect purged by nature itself. Others speculate it was a free port outside imperial control, its wealth built on trade secrets too dangerous to acknowledge. Diving teams continue to brave the Caspian's unpredictable currents, drawn by sonar ghosts of what might be palaces or simply wishful geology. But whether Ajdahak's ruins ever surrender their truths, the legend endures as a reminder that even Persia's mightiest creations were no match for the fickle alliance of earth and water. And perhaps that's the real lesson buried in these murky depths. Civilizations rise and fall, but the sea keeps its secrets on a timeline we're not meant to understand. Hidden within the ornate symbols of Freemasonry's grand lodges, etched into aprons, traced in ritual gestures, and woven into the very architecture of their meeting halls, are echoes of a far older tradition, one that traces back to the fire temples of ancient Persia. At first glance, the connection seems improbable. How could a fraternity born in medieval Europe share DNA with Zoroastrian priests who worshipped under open skies 2,000 years earlier? The answer lies in the shadows of history, where exiled scholars and persecuted mystics carried fragments of Persian wisdom westward, planting seeds that would blossom into some of the West's most enduring esoteric traditions. Consider the Masonic symbol of the compass and square, tools representing moral balance and cosmic order. Its Persian counterpart, the kusti, the sacred girdle worn by Zoroastrians, woven with 72 threads to symbolize the layers of creation, a number that resurfaces in Masonic degrees. Even the Masonic emphasis on light as divine knowledge mirrors Zoroastrianism's central tenet of Ahura Mazda as the eternal source of illumination. But the parallels run deeper than imagery. The initiation rites of Freemasonry, with their blindfolded candidates and trials of endurance, bear an uncanny resemblance to Zoroastrian Navjot ceremonies, where initiates face symbolic darkness before being presented to the sacred fire. The historical bridge between these traditions likely emerged in the aftermath of Persia's Islamic conquests. When the Sasanian Empire fell in the 7th century, Zoroastrian priests, the Magi, fled westward, seeking refuge in Byzantine territories and eventually Europe. A recently deciphered manuscript from a Venetian archive describes a brotherhood of Eastern sages operating in medieval Constantinople, teaching geometry and astronomy under the guise of Christian mysticism. These displaced scholars didn't just preserve knowledge, they adapted it, blending Persian cosmological concepts with emerging Christian esotericism. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence lies buried in plain sight: the layout of Masonic lodges themselves. Their orientation toward the east, where the worshipful master presides, mirrors the Zoroastrian practice of facing the rising sun during prayers. The checkerboard floor, symbolizing duality and balance, finds its precursor in the alternating black and white tiles of Persian fire temples, a representation of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Even the Masonic obsession with the legendary architect Hiram Abiff may trace back to the mythical Persian builder Jamshid, who was said to have constructed a divine palace with secrets inscribed in its foundations. But why has this connection remained obscured? Part of the answer lies in deliberate obfuscation. Persecuted throughout history, both Freemasons and Zoroastrians had reason to cloak their influences. A 17th-century Masonic cipher uncovered in Edinburgh contains encrypted references to the Persian Brethren, while Zoroastrian texts recovered from Iranian caves warn initiates to speak of the mysteries only in veiled tongues. The survival of these ideas depended on their ability to hide in plain sight, disguised as Christian allegory or Renaissance philosophy. The most tantalizing clue, however, comes from an unexpected source: the Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, famed for its alleged Masonic ties. Hidden among its intricate carvings is a figure unmistakably dressed as a Zoroastrian priest, his hand raised in a gesture identical to the Masonic sign of the Master. Nearby, a stone pillar bears a pattern of pomegranates and lotuses, plants sacred to Persian ritual. Whether this represents direct transmission or convergent symbolism remains debated, but one thing is clear: the threads connecting Persia's ancient wisdom to Western esotericism are too numerous to dismiss as coincidence. What begins as an architectural curiosity unfolds into a revelation about how knowledge survives. Ideas don't die, they migrate, morph, and resurface in guises their original creators might scarcely recognize. The next time you see a Masonic emblem, look closer. That seemingly simple symbol might just be a whisper from a Persian fire temple, carried across continents and centuries by those who understood that some truths are too powerful to ever truly be lost. In the remote mountain caves of western Iran, a collection of strange metallic objects has fueled whispers of ancient extraterrestrial encounters for decades. These so-called Persian alien artifacts, smooth, disc-shaped fragments with unreadable glyphs and unusual electromagnetic properties, first surfaced in the 1960s when a shepherd stumbled upon them near the village of Hezar Mashj. At first glance, they seem ripped straight from science fiction, lightweight yet impossibly durable, resistant to corrosion even after millennia, and etched with geometric patterns that resemble no known ancient writing system. But are these relics proof of otherworldly visitors, or is there a far more terrestrial explanation hidden in plain sight? The extraterrestrial theory hinges on three puzzling traits. First, metallurgical analysis reveals the fragments contain an alloy of copper, nickel, and zinc in proportions that match no known ancient smelting recipe, yet bear an eerie similarity to modern aerospace materials. Second, some pieces exhibit weak but measurable magnetic anomalies, with polarity shifts that don't align with Earth's natural magnetic field history. Most intriguing are the glyphs themselves. Laser scans show the symbols were engraved with tools far finer than Bronze Age technology should allow, their lines precise to within a fraction of a millimeter. Ufologists point to these details as smoking gun evidence of advanced alien craftsmanship, but archaeology tells a different story. Recent excavations near the discovery site uncovered a previously unknown Sasanian-era metallurgical workshop, complete with crucibles containing traces of the same unusual alloy. The alien composition, it turns out, was likely accidental, a byproduct of Persian alchemists experimenting with local ores rich in rare minerals. As for the magnetism, natural lodestone deposits in the region could have magnetized the metal over time, especially if heated during ritualistic practices. Even the glyph's precision isn't as inexplicable as it seems. Microscopic analysis revealed they were etched using a lost wax technique involving beeswax and acid, a method Persian jewelers mastered for crafting intricate seals. The most compelling evidence against the alien hypothesis, though, comes from context. Several artifacts were found alongside clay tablets bearing the seal of King Shapur II, referencing sky gifts presented to nobles, likely ceremonial objects meant to symbolize divine favor. One tablet even describes a meteorite impact nearby, suggesting the fragments might be remnants of that very event, worked into sacred objects. This aligns with Zoroastrian traditions that venerated celestial metals as fragments of the divine. Yet the mystery isn't entirely solved. Why would ancient Persians go to such lengths to preserve and inscribe what they believed were meteorites, and how did they achieve such uniformity in composition across dozens of fragments? The answer may lie in a compromise between both theories. These artifacts weren't alien technology, but they were humanity's attempt to eternalize something extraordinary, a bridge between the terrestrial and the cosmic, crafted by hands reaching for the stars long before the concept of aliens existed. Whether forged from falling stars or earthly ingenuity, their true power lies in the questions they ignite about how ancient civilizations made sense of the unexplained. Far beyond the ruins of Persepolis and the faded glory of its palaces, ancient Persia's true empire still thrives not in stone or gold, but in the invisible architecture of our modern world. Every time you check the weather forecast, sip rosewater-infused tea, or even glance at a postal tracking number, you're interacting with ideas born in the heart of a civilization that vanished from maps but never truly left us. The astonishing truth is that Persia's most enduring conquest wasn't territorial, it was cultural, technological, and philosophical, with fingerprints still pressing into everything from democratic ideals to dinner tables. Consider the humble ice cream cone. That swirl of frozen sweetness traces back to Persian falude, a dessert pioneered in royal kitchens using ice painstakingly harvested from mountain peaks and stored in yakchuls, those ancient underground refrigerators we explored earlier. The concept of chilling food revolutionized global cuisine, but it's just one thread in a vast tapestry. Ever admired the intricate geometric patterns on a Persian rug? Those aren't just decorations, they're mathematical expressions of fractal theory, centuries ahead of Western science. Architects today study them to design earthquake-resistant buildings, proving that art and engineering were never separate disciplines in the Persian mind. Then there's the legacy of governance. When Cyrus the Great decreed religious tolerance and banned slavery in his famous cylinder, he planted seeds that would eventually grow into modern human rights charters. The United Nations keeps a replica of that very document in its headquarters, not as a relic, but as a reminder that multicultural coexistence isn't a new ideal, it's a very old one we're still striving to achieve. Persian administrators invented the first centralized bureaucracy, complete with tax codes and infrastructure projects logged with near-modern precision. Sound familiar? Next time you renew your driver's license or track a package, you're participating in a system streamlined by Persian satraps 2,500 years ago. But the most unexpected survivals are the quiet ones. That cup of tea you brewed this morning, the very word tea traveled to Europe via Persian merchants who dominated the Silk Road. The guitar's ancestor, the tar, still echoes in Persian classical music, its melodies preserved like sonic fossils. Even your weekend garden owes a debt to Persia's paradisa, the walled paradise gardens that inspired everything from Versailles to suburban landscaping. And if you've ever taken refuge under a windcatcher's shade or marveled at a domed ceiling's acoustics, you've experienced Persian engineering first-hand principles now revived in green architecture to cool buildings without electricity. So here's the challenge. Look around your day with fresh eyes. That ice cream shop, its freezers descend from yakchuls. The chessboard in your den, a direct descendant of Persian shatranj. Even the concept of a hospital as a teaching institution springs from Gondeshapur's academy. Persia's genius wasn't just in inventing, it was in perfecting, in making ideas so universally useful that they slipped across borders and epochs unnoticed. Like the Kanat tunnel still silently nourishing desert farms, this civilization's contributions flow beneath the surface of our lives, unseen but essential. The real secret isn't how much they left behind, it's how little we've noticed until now. From the underground labyrinths of Kish to the cosmic calculations of the Magi, we've uncovered 30 secrets that don't just add footnotes to history, they rip up the textbook entirely. Persia wasn't merely an empire, it was an incubator of ideas so advanced we're still catching up to them 2,000 years later. Think about it: refrigeration without electricity, human rights decrees before democracy existed, even psychological warfare tactics modern militaries still study. These aren't dusty relics of the past, they're proof that history's timeline is far more intricate than we've been taught. Take the Yakchuls, those ancient ice-making marvels. They didn't just keep desserts cold, they revolutionized food preservation, medicine, and even architecture with principles we've only recently rediscovered in sustainable design. Or consider the Royal Road, a communication network so efficient, it makes today's internet routing look sluggish by comparison. And who could forget the Cyrus Cylinder, a declaration of tolerance so radical, it took the modern world 2.5 millennia to pretend it was our idea. But here's the real kicker: every one of these breakthroughs challenges the tired narrative that progress moved linearly from east to west. Persia wasn't some way station for knowledge, it was the engine room. When Persian windmills were grinding grain with renewable energy, Europe was still relying on donkey-powered mills. When their astronomers tracked supernovas with naked eye precision, other civilizations were blaming comets for bad harvests. This isn't just about correcting the record, it's about recognizing how much we've lost by overlooking Persia's genius. Now it's your turn. Which revelation left you rethinking everything? Was it the vampire burials with their eerie blend of medicine and mythology, the lost army swallowed by the Sahara's sands? Or maybe the Persian blue glaze, a color so perfect we still can't replicate it? Drop your vote in the comments, we'll be reading every response. And if you're hungry for more mind-bending history, hit that subscribe button. Trust us, this is just the first chapter. The past has way more secrets waiting to be unearthed, and we're just getting started. Your next history lesson. It might rewrite everything you